Let's jump right into this explainer on the totally messy, highly collaborative, and honestly just fascinating evolution of the iconic 1983 puzzle platformer Lode Runner. We're going to unpack the history of a game that didn't just define an era, but arguably laid the entire groundwork for modern level design and user-generated content as we know it today.
So let's start off with a bit of a mystery. How exactly does a secret diversion, literally disguised within a broken graphing program on a university minicomputer, somehow become a multi-million-dollar worldwide gaming phenomenon? Well, it's a crazy story. We're talking late-night coding, sheer luck, brilliant iteration, and a really great reminder that the biggest revolutions, they usually start in the most unassuming places.
Section 1. The Campus Origins, Birth of a Classic. Let's look at exactly where this legendary concept began.
Because this wasn't just an immaculate creation by one single person. No, it was more of a butterfly effect. Back in 1980, James Bratsanos heard a friend describe an obscure, mostly forgotten arcade game called Space Panic. He took some, let's call them creative liberties, and programmed a game initially called Suicide, which was later renamed Kong. Fast forward to 1981, and he and a fellow student were porting it over to the University of Washington's minicomputer. And that's exactly when a student named Doug Smith joined the effort, eventually rewriting the whole thing for the Apple II as Miner, before finally polishing it into the 1983 commercial blockbuster we all know as Lode Runner.
But before it was this huge commercial product, it was literally just text on a screen. Early minicomputer graphics were pure ASCII text. So, to hide the game from strict university administrators, these students brilliantly embedded it within an otherwise broken graphing program. If you typed graph, the computer would prompt you for a math function and then just crash. Unless, of course, you typed in a secret password. If you knew the password, boom! The screen transformed into a game where the player was a dollar sign, literally a dollar sign, running around, desperately trying to avoid enemy guards that were represented by paragraph symbols. It absolutely took over campus life.
Which brings us to Section 2, Polishing the Pickaxe, from lab to living room.
Now, Doug Smith definitely didn't just walk straight into a huge publishing deal. Actually, when his 8-year-old nephew kept bugging him for a version he could play at home, Smith spent a weekend porting that mainframe game to the Apple II. He bought the rights from Bratsanos for $1,500, renamed it Miner, and sent it off to the publisher Bruderbund. And what did they do? They hit him with a brutally terse rejection letter. They essentially told him the game didn't fit their product line. Thanks, but no thanks. It just didn't look the part.
But Smith didn't give up. Instead, he went all in. He actually borrowed money to buy a color monitor and a joystick. He upgraded the entire experience from those clunky monochrome text graphics to vibrant color bitmaps. And even more importantly, he utilized the Apple joystick's unique 2-button design to create this incredibly seamless digging mechanic. One button to dig left, one to dig right. He sent this massively improved version back out, and this time, publishers fought over it. Broderbund ultimately won him over with a $10,000 advance and a massive 23% royalty rate.
Let's move on to Section 3, Elegance in Game Design, Deceptive Simplicity.
Let's focus on the number 6. This single number really represents the core of the game's deceptive simplicity. You see, in an era where games were constantly trying to add more and more convoluted controls, Lode Runner offered the player just 6 basic actions to interact with the entire environment.
And that brilliantly illustrates the absolute elegance of limited mechanics by mixing just those 6 action verbs, moving up, down, left, right, and digging left or right, with a tiny handful of nouns like diggable brick, solid metal, ladders, enemy monks, and treasure. The game creates an infinite buffet of complex puzzle strategy. You aren't overwhelmed with controls at all. Rather, you're overwhelmed by the endless tactical possibilities that those simple controls create.
Because this isn't an action game where you just blindly shoot enemies. Instead, you're crafting emergent strategies. Get this, the game engine automatically fills in a dug pit after 10 seconds, right? Monks can climb out in just a few seconds. But if you time it so the pit fills exactly while the monk is inside, you permanently bury them. Even better, you can actually use these mad monks as tiny delivery men. They pick up gold you can't reach, so if you trap them, you can safely walk right on their heads and steal the booty back. It's an incredibly dynamic system that completely rewards creativity and planning over pure reflexes.
Section 4, the Level Editor, a gaming revolution.
But before we even get to that editor, consider the number 150. The original game generously came packed with a mind-boggling 150 levels of increasing, fiendish complexity. They didn't just throw you to the wolves.
Each level steadily trained you on the game's mechanics, forcing you to think about your limited verbs and nouns in entirely new ways.
But the true stroke of genius was a staggering inclusion for 1983, a level editor. Doug Smith and Broderbund literally took the exact software tools they used to build the game's 150 levels and shipped them right on the disc for the player to use. I mean, wow. It effectively mainstreamed the concept of user-generated content for an entire generation of kids. For so many Gen X game designers, building Lode Runner levels for their younger siblings or friends was their very first hands-on lesson in game design. A real game changer. And finally, Section 5, a global legacy, triumph and tragedy. To really understand the massive scale of this phenomenon, we have to look at the era. Back in 1983, if a game sold 50,000 copies, it was considered a major certified hit. While Doug Smith's essentially one-man production skyrocketed right past that, eventually selling over 2.5 million copies worldwide, across virtually every computer platform in existence.
And its impact in Japan specifically, it literally cannot be overstated. It was one of the first Western games to be embraced there with absolute fanish obsession. I mean, before Super Mario Bros. Drove Nintendo sales, Lode Runner was getting the ball rolling. By 1985, the mania was so huge that a national competition was held in a Tokyo stadium. 50 finalists battled it out on a staggering 86-foot screen, while a somewhat overwhelmed Doug Smith looked on, handing out prizes. Just incredible.
However, to ground those phenomenal sales numbers in reality, we absolutely must remember the man behind the code. Doug Smith tragically passed away by suicide in 2014. As his daughter Nina beautifully described him in the source materials for this explainer, he was an intelligent, kind, and hilarious father who struggled deeply with severe depression. He was a farm kid from Iowa who never truly wanted the spotlight or the fame or the wealth that Lode Runner brought him. It's a really vital reminder that right behind these towering digital achievements are complicated, real human beings.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. The very next time you build a custom level in a modern game, or you're solving an emergent, physics-based puzzle where the environment acts as both your weapon and your tool, ask yourself, how much of that modern experience traces its exact lineage right back to a secret text-based computer lab diversion in 1981? The history of game design is written in these quiet, brilliant iterations. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.